Hello and welcome to the Rejection Diaries Season 2 with me, Stuart White. Today I'm joined by Natalia Godsmark and we're going to be discussing all about her writing journey so far and her experience with rejection, how she's coped with it and how she's learned new strategies to help her along the way. And hopefully for everyone listening, there'll be some new strategies for you to learn today too. So hi Natalia, lovely to see you.
Hi, nice to see you too.
Just so everyone gets a bit more of a feel for who you are and what you write and so on, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing journey so far?
Yeah, I can. I think like every writer, I always loved writing as a child. English was my favourite subject at school, and then I went on to study English literature at university. And I did a couple of creative writing modules during that, but obviously the main degree was English literature, so um, it wasn't that big within the degree. But I carried on writing a little bit on the side whilst I then went into the workplace, but I didn't do much of it, and actually then ended up studying law as a postgraduate, and sort of forgot all about creativity in the process. And I then moved to Australia after several years of studying law and training to be a lawyer, and I ended up working in compliance for a while, which was again completely not creative. So I still did a little bit of writing on the side, but not loads because I didn't have loads of time. And then when I moved back to England, I got married and had a baby, and at that point thought in my naivety that, oh, when I'm on maternity leave, I'll have loads and loads of time, and I can write that book that I've always dreamt of. And then obviously I had a baby and realised that you don't have quite as much time as you thought that you were going to. But I did start writing a bit more because once the baby got a bit older and I started having a bit more time when she was sleeping, I would do bits here and there. And I did finally write that first novel that I'd always, dreamed of doing. Although it took me almost 2 years, and it was terrible, like embarrassing. But it taught me that I could do it. I queried it, which is really embarrassing now. I look back and I think every writer does this as well, don't they? They query too soon when they don't know anything because they think, oh, I've done it. And every website of any agent says, we don't expect the finished product. And I think that they don't mean quite as unfinished as that novel was.
Yeah.
But you think might as well try. And anyway, I queried that and obviously got absolutely nowhere with it. But that taught me that I could write a book, and I actually did have it in me. And so I thought, well, I need to do a bit of research and learn a bit more about, because I wanted to write middle grade specifically, because I think I've always loved children's books, and in a way, partly because I think as a child you're so passionate about characters in a way that you're not as an adult. And I think as an adult, I've read books that I've loved, but 2-3 weeks later have forgotten what was in them completely. Whereas I can still recall every one of my absolute favourite books from my childhood. I sort of wanted to do that as well. So I started, after I finished that first book, I started going to the library a lot and getting out middle grade books that had been published recently, because everything that I remembered were books from the 90s, and obviously things have changed so much. So I read lots, and then I wrote another book, which took me just a year. So that was good, and I queried that one, and I got a little bit of good feedback. I got a couple of agents said they wanted to read the full, but it amounted to nothing. So then did it again, started again, wrote another one, and again, the same thing sort of happened. And then I started feeling quite despondent about it, because I sort of thought, well, I don't really know what I'm doing here. and I hadn't done any courses. I was just trying to read a lot. And at that point, I think I met someone via Twitter or something who said, well, there's this thing called Write Mentor Pitch, or WM Pitch. Why don't you try and pitch your book and see if anyone likes it? But she sent me that message on the day of WM Pitch, and it was about 6 o'clock in the evening. So I did it, but obviously didn't get anywhere. But that was how I found out about Write Mentor. And then so then I Googled it and read about Lindsay Galvin's course, and I did that one. And that was last year in March. So first lockdown, I was home with 2 babies, well, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I thought this will be a good thing for me for the evening. I can do this once a week, and it was reasonably priced. And so I sort of thought, yeah, why not try it? And actually that's where I met loads and loads of other writers, and it's just been so helpful, because ever since then I've been swapping chapters with different writers, and sort of I've learned. I mean, Lindsay's course was amazing, but it wasn't just that sort of has developed my writing. It was meeting all the other writers, and also I think just learning through other people's interests and passions, and by swapping work, I've been critiquing things, and I've sort of learned what I don't like when I read, as well as what I do like. So even just critiquing other people's works has been just as helpful. So then I wrote another book last year, and I have been querying that this summer. And I've had some success with that. I got longlisted for the Guppy open submission, and then I got 4 or maybe 5 full requests, and a couple of them are still out, but it's been months now, so you just don't know, do you, whether that means that they've read it and hate it, or maybe they just haven't read it yet. You just don't know. And now I've started a new one, and I'm on a new course with Jenny Pearson at the moment, which I'm loving, actually. She's brilliant. She's so enthusiastic, which makes it it's just really good fun. And I'm writing a new one, so that's it.
Amazing. Oh, I really, that's probably my favourite bit, is listening to everyone talk about how they came into writing and how they got started and so on. So it's lovely to hear all that. I just wanted to ask a couple of things just about what you mentioned there. So you said that you felt the first book was not particularly good.
It was awful.
So did you send that one out to agents?
Yeah, luckily I was still using my maiden name, so it's from an email address that they won't know anymore. Yeah, I did. I mean, sent it to every. That was the year that I bought the Writers and Readers Handbook, or whatever it's called, the one that lists everyone. And so, I literally knew nothing about the industry at all then. I wouldn't say I know loads now, but I went through it and literally sent it to every single agent in that book. And terrible, and a form email as well. So it wasn't even like I had read the books that each of the agents were representing. So it was very embarrassing.
That's fine. I think that's more common than you think. People just sending out like a sort of blanket email. I've heard of like people like CCing in all the agents they're submitting to just in one email. So yeah, no, that's good. So you obviously got off the mark with that first one, which was good. It's good to get that. It's like ripping off a band-aid, getting that first book out there and getting the rejections and so on. And the fact that you then showed up and then wrote book 2 and 3 and so on, that's obviously a huge testament to, the resilience of just getting beyond that. Because I think even people who finish a book, a lot of them after, mass rejection, that book would give up. So how did you feel after book 1 where it didn't go anywhere for you and you moved on to book 2?
I think, to be honest, I knew that it wasn't good enough. I don't really know what I was thinking. I think I was probably just so sleep deprived, and I just thought, I don't know. I think I just thought it was a fun idea, and then actually really enjoyed the process of writing it. So the next time I started, I thought, well, I'm going to do a bit more research here. I need to know a bit more about this, and particularly because I was remembering books that I loved that were written years ago. So it was silly because now books are so different, and even actually, I mean, they talk about how Harry Potter obviously was one of my favourite books. I was about 12 when that came out, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, I was a real fan. But even now, I watched Barry Cunningham the other day on a course, and he said like that would be very unlikely to be picked up now because of the very long chapter 1 that is almost all backlog, and children nowadays have such short attention spans, and so they expect you to reach the end of the inciting incident by the end of chapter 1, which obviously doesn't necessarily happen. I don't think, it doesn't happen in Harry Potter. So as an example, but yeah, I knew all that when I finished that first book. I just think I was, I'd written it, so I thought somebody has to read this. So sent it out to everyone. Oh, it was terrible. Although actually the idea itself, I may come back to it one day because it was quite a fun idea. It's just that it was it was just badly done. And then, when I wrote the second one, actually that one, it was just everything about it was much shorter, it was more concise. Because that was the other thing, is that the first book was, it was almost a bit too young. I don't think I understood the differences between lower middle grade and upper middle grade. It was something like 60,000 words, but it was very much lower middle grade in terms of the subject matter. So it's just sort of a learning curve, isn't it? You don't know anything when you start out. So then that's when I decided, okay, I don't know why I haven't done this before. I'm going to read loads of books, and then I did, which is helped quite a lot. I think my writing's better now.
And so you moved into book 2. You'd obviously learned a little bit more. You were happier with that book. How did you feel when you started sending it out? And you said you got a few requests for that one?
Just a couple. I felt much more positive about it. I think I spent so long working on the first 3 chapters, though, because I knew that was what agents ask for when you send them out. And the mistake I made was that I didn't. I mean, now I look back at that particular book and I think, well, the first 3 chapters were pretty good. It's sort of not. It was the rest of it, but I mean, a book is between 40 and 50,000, well, 60 maybe. 1,000 words, the whole thing has to be good, not just the first 5,000. I think that was the mistake that I made there. But again, that one actually is the one that I'm working on again now because I really liked the idea. It was fun. It just needed quite a lot of work in the second half, and now I've changed actually so much that it's almost unrecognisable. But the premise is the same. That one was the one that I got longlisted for the Novel and Development Award earlier this year, because I just thought, I'll try and I'll send it out, just see what they think, and actually it gave me the confidence to sort of start that one again. It's funny how it works though, isn't it? Because when you're about to start querying, you're so enthusiastic about your own book, you can't imagine that other people won't be. And you send it out and you write this letter and you spend hours and hours on the synopsis trying to get it perfect, just in case that agent will read it and think it sounds like a good novel. And then when you get radio silence from most of them, it's very, very deflating. And that's, I think, the hardest bit about this whole thing, is that, the enthusiasm, there's such highs when you finished a book and you think this is definitely better than my last one. And the one that I've written this year, because I started it in January and I sent it off in the summer, so it was actually quite a short space of time, but I felt like I'd learned so much, because I think it was that guppy long listing that gave me the confidence to then send it out. Actually I did get better feedback from it, but obviously it's so subjective, and some people write back immediately. I had 2 agents actually in the first week of sending it out saying, loved it, really want to read the whole, Can you send me the full, and I'll get back to you in the next month or two. And then I sent it out to something like 12 agents in that week, and then 4 of them literally nothing, and then a few of them sort of came back a few weeks later. But it's funny how it works, isn't it? Because it is so subjective. Some I got one who within about 4 hours wrote me an email saying it's not for me. So it just depends, doesn't it? It depends whether they like the subject matter and whether they like your writing, whether it grabs them. So it has to be good, and it has to have that luck as well, of all those other things.
Yeah, I mean, I always say there's 3 factors: luck, taste, and timing, and you have to, get all 3 of them, in that sort of ideal trinity of circumstance, and it doesn't always work like that, unfortunately. No matter how good the book is that you've written. I wanted to touch on something you mentioned there. You talked about the silence and the waiting as being particularly tough for you. What's your experience been recently? Because you said you queried in the summer. What's your experience been recently of waiting and not hearing back and so on compared to previous novels?
Oh, definitely, it's a lot worse. I think since COVID, I think everyone thinks they're a novelist, so everyone is sending out books, and I mean I've heard that loads in the the agent I think they're called agent parties, that SCDBWI, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because I've been watching quite a lot of them. The agents say that they're receiving sort of 3, 4 to 5 times the amount that they were pre-COVID. But it's starting to get better now, apparently. But then I queried at the wrong time, because I didn't sort of think about Frankfurt, which apparently, like, basically for an entire month, no agents even look at their submissions, and all these other factors that you just don't know about. But I don't really know when there is a good time to query, because it always seems to be a problem, doesn't it? It's Christmas, you can't query at Christmas, or it's the summer, everyone's on holiday, or so I think you just got to query when your book's finished, and then just try not to be impatient, which is not my strongest point. So I've done my best. Basically, I've focused on a new book. That's the only way that you can do it. But yeah, it is. There have definitely been times in the last few weeks when I just sort of thought, oh, what is the point of this? When you go through the whole thing and you really get enthusiastic about it and you love it, and then you get nothing back, or you do get, or the worst, actually, I think worse than the silence is I've had some agents request the full, read it, and then write back and say. So one of them wrote, I love the pacing, I love the main character, I think the voice is brilliant and you should really stick with that. However, it's not for me. I'm just like, I don't know what to fix there. That doesn't give me anything to work with. So it's just quite frustrating.
Yeah. I know I completely agree. Those are amongst the worst ones.
Yeah, and people call them champagne rejections, and you think, well, there's nothing to celebrate here. Basically, you're telling me I can't do anything.
I was wanting to ask you about what, obviously you've written a few books now and sent them out. What is there a single rejection or a sort of group of rejections which have been the most difficult for you? And how did you feel when that happened? If you do have any of those.
I mean, they're always difficult, really, because I mean, I have had 1 or 2 that were quite tricky work. So one of them, in my last one, I got an agent write back to me saying, I've really loved this. I think this is great, but I have just recently taken on a graphic novel with a similar premise. And that's frustrating, because you sort of think, well, if I had queried a few months earlier, but I wasn't ready a few months earlier, so it's sort of irrelevant. That's always a bit difficult. I hate the silence. I find that really annoying, actually, because I sort of feel like I think it feels almost unkind. It feels cruel, because I know that agents are busy, and I know that they read in their spare time, but they also rely on authors. And if you're spending all this time working on a book, and most books take up to a year or whatever, or more, actually. Some people I know have taken 3 or 4 years to write them, and then they've sent them off, and then there's not even a reply, or not even a confirmation of receipt. And that I find really difficult because, and actually sometimes actually worse than that is when you talk to an agent in a one-to-one, or, you know, some of the courses that I have done, the agent comments on, you know, the first chapter or whatever at the end, and then they say, it's brilliant, I'd love to read this. And then you write it, you send it to them, and then there's no feedback at all, just nothing. And they say, but if we don't get back to you within 12 weeks, you need to know that we're not interested. And I think that is quite hard. It's all quite hard to cope with, isn't it? Rejection's never good. And also, you don't get much validation along the journey anyway. So while you're writing, that I think that's why Write Mentor and other places where you meet other writers is so important. Certainly for me, in the last year, I've improved so much and also enjoyed it much more because I've had friends who are doing the same thing, and they can also help when you get the rejections that you're so disappointed by, because they know how it feels. Whereas, you know, my husband's very kind to me about it, but he doesn't know how it feels because he hasn't been through it.
So let's finish off then with something which might be useful for the people that are listening. Do you have one bit of advice or a tip or something that you've learned along the way that might be useful to others who have sent out their work and are waiting a response?
So, I mean, obviously get some writer friends. That's always the best. Writers, that's the tip really that everyone, I would imagine, gives, because I think having other people who are going through this with you makes it just so much easier. And they are your competition, but only sort of, because everybody's style is different. And yes, you might be submitting to the same agents, but the same agents won't necessarily like both of your work. It's silly to think of it like that. I think I did think of it like that a bit at the beginning, and I sort of changed my opinion completely. I also think maybe one recommendation would be, don't get those, you know, you can get these paid manuscript appraisals, because I did that once where, but I didn't know who it was really. You Google it and loads of them come up, and it's really hard to know who to choose. And I would just say take every piece of feedback you get with a pinch of salt, because they can be quite cruel. And some of them are, you know, other authors who work with, you know, Spark Mentoring or whatever are great, because there's no agenda. They are just trying to help you, and that works really well. But some of them whose claim to, you know, or we'll send yours to an agent if we think it's good enough, and all this stuff. It's all just a marketing scheme, and they charge so much money, and I mean, they're never going to. It seems. So I would think twice before throwing more money at it, because it is there are a lot of these things that will take advantage of everyone who's just desperate to get published.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much for those insights, but also for just sharing your experience more generally and being so honest and open about it. It's really hard, I think, sometimes to talk about this side of it, and I know a lot of people just won't do it at all. And so your sharing and your insights will really help other writers as well who are at a similar stage. So thanks so much for sharing everything you have today, Natalia.
Of course, yeah. It was good talking about it, actually. It's very cathartic.
Yeah, it's very therapeutic, I think. So thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you.